very fine. I just woke up. I need coffee now.
Yeah, Loriana, we were saying Omar is the most gorgeous man in Granada.
¿De verdad?
Sí,
Oh.
es verdad, es verdad.
I just feel a bit shy in front of the camera.
No, fantastic, you're fantastic.
No me digas, hombre. No te creo por nada.
¿No me crees?
No, por nada.
Voy a hacer así la pose.
No me parece como una persona tan incómoda en este momento, no.
No estoy incómodo.
Isn't it?
Pero tus ojos, ¿qué te pasó?
Que ayer estuve fumando.
Go in there so you're in there
Como
too.
demasiado, ¿no? Porque son como mojados, ¿no?
Algunos, sí.
Algunos. Porque es como tiene una capa de agua.
Sí, aquí enfrente.
¿Tú también llevas lentes de contacto?
Ahora mismo sí.
¿Desde cuándo? No me...
De... ¿Hace tiempo?
¿Así? Nunca me di cuenta.
Sí.
Sí, yo también los llevo. Sí. Pero has visto cuando yo tengo mis gafas. Sí.
Daniel,
Son
vente para acá.
rotos.
Come here, come por favor. No. Scared by the camera. Shouldn't be scared too. We're gonna get famous. No, don't make it.
Ay, ¿qué pasó? Es que quiero.
Joder, tiene una herida. ¿no?
Sí.
But it's not very difficult. It's just you have it for 2 months. It's normal.
Es normal.
Yeah.
Pues no creo.
Because it bites.
Entonces tiene infección.
No, this face desinfección.
Que huele, ¿no?
You have cigarettes.
And what else would you want from me?
You have a liab, the liab.
He wants everything. Always. Yeah.
Daniel. Ah, no, pero esto no fumo. Solo de
¿Por
liab.
qué?
Porque solo fumo de liab. Cigarros de liab.
If you wanted to, you can open it up and put it all.
Ah, ya me dio el libro. You have the pepper. Now,
Como, how many? Sí, vamos. Es verde, todo este año, ¿no? Mira ese.
Marcus, I really like to do an interview with you. Would you like that? Tell you some of the stories and to some of the people in the US and other places.
I sure can.
Yeah, because it's nice people who have sort of lived lives that are unique and different than other people,
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So I think if you like, you can just start, talking and telling your story to people,
How I came to Granada.
Yeah, where you're from, and a bit about your childhood, how you grew up, where did you grow up, and how you ended up in Granada, and how you've been since you came to Granada, and some of the experiences you have had that you feel like you want to communicate it to other people, share it. Just
That's quite a bit.
whatever you like, huh?
Okay.
The camera is all yours.
Well, I'll start out by saying I'm Marcus, and I come from Wyoming. I was born in the town of Rock Springs in the year 1978, and then I moved to Cheyenne with my family. My family moved to Cheyenne and took me whenever I was 5. And that's where I grew up, in Cheyenne, Wyoming. A very cowboy town, and that's where I learned how to chew tobacco. And let's see. Well, I'll try to lead up to the part about how I got to Granada, and that would have to do a bit about my family, I guess. My grandparents are all Hispanic, what we call Hispanic or Chicano, and they all speak Spanish. and I never learned it growing up, and I always wanted to know how to speak Spanish. It was something for me that I felt like we were losing a little bit of my family when we forgot how to speak Spanish, and so I thought I would take it upon myself to learn Spanish, but the fun way, which is done in Granada, Spain. And okay. My name is Marcus Medina, Madrid. So on one side, my mom's side was Madrid, on the other side Medinas. Two names that you see a lot here in Spain. And that was a lot of my influence to coming here to Granada. Do you have anything you want to say about any of that? Do you want me to elaborate on any of that stuff?
Anything you like to talk about, just continue talking.
Okay.
Anything that just comes to your brain. Whatever you like to talk about, just go ahead.
That's one part, is the family and the fact that I always want to learn Spanish. And the other part is that I like traveling. And that started back in '97 with me and a couple friends decided to get into in '97, just me and one friend decided to hop into a car and take off for 6 weeks and just travel the west coast of the United States. We didn't have a whole lot of money, and we'd never had a real definite plan of where we were going each day, but it was the best experience ever, and I would think that first trip was the one that gave me the motivation to continue traveling, and I think the most important thing about that trip was that we didn't have plans as to where we were going at any time, or for how long the trip was going to last, or anything. So it was very spontaneous.
¿Me dicen su bebida?
Sí.
A mí la bebida, compañero la comida.
Sí.
¿La bebida suya? ¿Para beber?
Ah, para beber.
Un vino tinto.
¿Una copa?
Sí.
O una si van a beber vino, tengo botellas de medio litro. ¿Le quiere beber?
No sé.
Are you gonna have a red wine?
Sí, deseo tinto de verano y ensalada mixta.
La comida de mi compañera, a mí la bebida.
Only the drinks from him.
Nada más que
And
la
the food
bebida.
we have to get from the next guy.
Oh, we can only get drinks here?
Tinto de verano,
Okay, tinto de verano.
una copa de vino de Rioja.
So we can't eat, huh?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
He's just taking drinks.
he's just a drink waiter.
¿Qué refresco tiene?
Coca-Cola, limón, naranja, Sprite y tónica.
That's your reason.
Y Nesquik.
I continue. It's still on. Okay. And so we had no plan. It was very spontaneous, everything that we did, and we headed pretty much straight into California, and we went to a few concerts there, and met some really interesting traveling people. Went for my first time to San Francisco. I was up in the redwood forest and saw big, huge trees. And then we came into Oregon, where there was a rainbow gathering, and we decided to go to that, where there was about 20,000 people living in the mountain for a month or so. And rainbow gatherings are very spontaneous places, so it was a perfect spot for our trip. And then we came back into Wyoming, and in the end, though, we felt like we had learned something. I think I don't know what it was. Maybe something like spontaneity is good, and you have to take your adventures, and sometimes not having a direct plan is good, and maybe better a lot of times. And that's how the first trip got me excited. Since that trip, then I decided with the same friend, and then the next year with another friend, which made 3 of us. We did the same thing. Went through California. That year, actually 4 of us left. 4 of us came back, but it was only 3 were a core. It was one guy who came with us originally had left halfway, and then we picked someone else up halfway. And the best thing about that second trip was for me, and we still talk about it amongst our friends, is how we left with practically no money to go do this travel. And that was in '98. My friend Ryan left with $4. I left with the most money, and I had around 200. My other friend had about 130. So between the 3 of us, we had $350 roughly to leave. That's how we were going to buy gas, food, and everything for a month and a half or 2 months. And so instead of making poor Ryan with only $4 suffer, we decided to put all our money together and call it the family fund. And so whenever we needed gas or food or cigarettes, it just came out of the family fund, and it was a very nice moment also to just work like a family together. And instead of, oh well, I got this last time, it's your turn or whatever. It was just like, if you're hungry, okay, let's eat. If we need gas, let's get gas. If we need tobacco, let's get tobacco. And all the money we made along the way also went directly into the family fund. And we came back into Wyoming with more money than what we left with.
Wow, tell us a little more detail about the trip.
This trip was more based around concerts. It was further festival concerts, I believe, are going on, which is the remnants of the Grateful Dead, and we wanted to go see those concerts. We also knew that we could make money in the parking lots of the concerts to continue our trip, and so we'd get to the concert 5 hours early and work, and then go see the concert and have a great time.
What kind of work?
Lots of work, mostly distributing goods, and we made our money like that, and we all worked equally hard, and it all went into the family fund.
Wow, when did you start playing the guitar, Marcus?
I didn't start playing guitar until right after that summer, which was my second year in university in Portland, Oregon, and I bought a guitar actually in Cheyenne at a pawn shop. Slowly started learning it with a couple of friends. Never was really too dedicated. There was many spells. See, this was 7 years ago, I guess. There's been many spells where I've gone 5 months without playing any guitar at all, and then I'll go 2 months playing quite a bit. And then I play a lot more now, but the first 5 or 6 years was sporadic playing.
So when did you end up coming to Granada?
Yeah, so I'm in Granada now. I came here roughly 2 years ago. In 1 week or so, it'll be 2 years since I first got here. And I had wanted to learn Spanish all my life, like I said earlier, and I also had grown an itch for traveling. So my university, I took Spanish classes, and I took one class that just talked about Spanish culture in the last 50 years, and I heard that Spain parties amongst the youth and older people, that Spain parties hard and late through the night. Not necessarily hard, but they party all night long, and that's the way my lifestyle was in the States, and so I figured maybe this place would be real nice, and so I came. And
How did you end up in Granada?
I just picked it. I flew into Madrid, and I stayed there my first 6 days, and it was a little too big for me. I didn't really meet anyone at all in those 6 days, and I don't think the Madrid people really cared to meet new people either. It felt like. Nor did I speak Spanish or understand it, so I guess. And after 6 days, I thought to myself, let's go south. South because it's going to be hotter generally, the more south you get, until you get to the equator. And so I saw there was 3 options: Sevilla, Cordoba, and Granada, and I just picked Granada. And I came to Granada and I got very lucky and fell in love very quickly with the town of Granada.
Marcus.
Would you like me to tell you how I fell in love?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, my first day, when I came to Spain, I figured I want to stay here for a year or two. Because I wanted to get to know people. And I realized after living in Portland, Oregon for 4.5 years that it takes time to meet people and become true friends. And so I wanted to stay at least a couple years. So I didn't know what town necessarily I was going to live in, but I showed up in Granada, and on my first day in Granada, I went looking for a job. I asked around at construction places for their phone numbers and wrote a lot of phone numbers down. And then I was going back to my hostel around 3, maybe in the afternoon.
Sí. Deseo.
¿Un aguacate con gambas?
Sí.
Where's the salads at? Ensalada mediterránea.
Aguacate con gambas.
Un aguacate con gambas. ¿Van a querer algo de segundo? ¿O solo...?
¿Cómo?
Quieren 2 aguacates y para usted la salada mediterránea, ¿no?
De segundo.
¿Quieren algo de segundo? ¿Alguna carne? ¿O un pescadito o algo?
That's it, ¿no?
Pues por este momento estamos bien.
¿Y vienen las bebidas?
Ahora mismo vienen las bebidas.
Okay, you were talking about the hostel when you.
Yeah. So I was walking back to my hostel to go take a nap, and I poked my head into a cafe, and I saw a girl with dreadlocks, which I used to wear, and I still hadn't really met anyone. It was my 7th day in Spain, and I thought I'd give this one a try, and see if maybe she wanted to smoke a hash joint, which I had. And so I went into the cafe and I sat next to her, and she seemed very timid. Or not timid, but she just didn't seem like she wanted to talk to me. She was doing a crossword puzzle, and I tried small talk, which didn't work. And then she asked, I told her I was from the States. And one of the questions on her crossword puzzle was, what's the name of the city where they used to burn the witches? What's the city? In the States.
It's in Massachusetts.
Yeah. You know?
I know, but I can't
You can say it then.
get it out of my mouth.
You know what it is? Salem.
Salem.
Oh, Salem, Massachusetts?
Salem, Massachusetts is where they used to burn witches in the beginning days of the United States. And so I told her Salem, and of course it fit in the crossword. And then she finally figured maybe she could come have a joint with me. And so we went outside, and her friend was just waking up in the van that they were sleeping in right out in front of the cafe. And so we sat out there. She had a guitar, and I actually played a little bit of guitar there. And we walked around. I told them that I was coming to Spain, that I felt like living here for a year or two, and that I mostly wanted to live in one spot for the year or two, so I could get to meet people and get to know people here in Spain, versus doing what I call a whirlwind travel, where you just stop for a few days and everywhere, and which can be very hectic. I kind of like the more chill type traveling, getting to know places. And so they understood that. We took a walk around town. I told them also that I was looking to find a place, and that's when these girls told me there's lots of empty houses here in Granada. I don't know if I should tell this to everyone, but I'll tell you anyway. There's lots of empty houses here in Granada, and sometimes people just move into those empty houses, and I said, wow, I want one of those, you know. And she said, oh, well, okay, here's a key, let's go to your new house. And so they took me to my new house, which was right on Calle Elvira, the main street, which could be similar to 13th Street in Eugene, or a Haight Street in Frisco, or Telegraph in Berkeley. It's the main road with all the bars. And my house was right there in the middle, a little 2-bedroom house, beautiful, real beautiful house on the inside. Real dirty, but I cleaned it up. No hot water, but it did have a bathroom, and it did have a kitchen. We didn't have gas either, which we could have got, but we were too lazy. And we furnished, I say we because the next day one of their friends came from Pamplona, and he didn't have a place to stay either. So I invited him to stay at my house. Also, being that I wasn't paying rent at this house, I was very apt to let their friends live there. And that was my magical moment on the first day of Granada. I was given a house, and I fell quickly in love from then on with the town of Granada.
So there were keys. It had a lock and there were keys.
Right, I'll explain this. I'm not quite sure how she got into that house originally, but somewhere along the line she changed the lock on the door. And so the good thing is, when you're doing these things, living in empty houses, is that if you have a key to the door, then you are not breaking and entering, and it is your house.
Oh, wow.
And so that's how she had the key. She gave me that key. They were like angels to me, those girls. Through them, I met most of the people that I still know now. All my very good friends started out in those very first few days in Granada with those girls from Pamplona. They took me around, showed me, introduced me to a lot of people, and showed me Granada. And through them, I have some of my very best friends in Spain.
Who is,
through those two girls that gave me the house.
oh, you met your best friend in Spain?
Best friends.
Best friend.
My very dear and close friends stemmed all from that very first day when I was giving a house here in Granada. We had several parties in that house, and I also wasn't really speaking Spanish at the time, nor did I understand it. And so this guy that I lived with in the house, we only ended up living there for 3.5 weeks before we were kicked out of the house. But the landlord eventually found us. But the guy I lived with didn't speak any English, and he spoke quite a bit. And I also learned Spanish very quickly, like this. I was forced to learn quickly if I wanted to talk to anyone I was hanging out with. I had to learn Spanish. because none of them spoke English, which was good. That's what I wanted, and that's what happened. And about 4 months later, I was speaking Spanish, more or less. Más o menos.
You know, I always wondered, like, how does it feel to live outside of the U.S.
As a U.S. citizen?
Yeah.
Living outside the U.S.?
Yeah, and also,
think it's great.
How do you feel about the U.S. and how do you feel about going back? Do you ever want to go back? Do you miss it? I mean, all the stuff that happens about, you know, that whole.
Let me tell you, from traveling, every time I drove back into Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is where I'm from, I get a goosebumps, and I feel like I'm really, truly at home when I drive back into Cheyenne, because that's where I grew up, and that's the land I know the best. I know what the birds sound like. I know the back roads. I know the best camping spots in that whole area. I know how the mountains look, and so I love Wyoming. It's my home, and I have said that if I live to be old, I would love to die there, because that's where I'm from. And however, I don't think I can live there anytime soon, for 10 or 20, maybe 30 years from now, because it's my town. I get really bored there. I was back home last year for 6 months, and I feel like I'm stagnant in that town and I'm not learning anything. So I left the town, and here in Granada I don't feel like I'm stagnant, and I do feel like I'm learning stuff. Learning a new language, I'm learning how to play guitar, and I'm meeting lots of good people and friends, and in terms of cultures and state of things now, I feel much more free in Granada than I do in the United States.
Can you talk a little about that freedom?
About freedom?
About that freedom you feel here that you don't feel in the States?
Yeah.
And if you could just talk about a little about the condition of the U.S., how do you feel about what's happening in the U.S. and about the planet? And
I feel that in the American culture, the United States culture, that there's a big stress on young people to get straight into working. And what do you do? What is your job? This thing is really forced into young people. I graduated university 3 years ago, and a lot of the people I graduated university with are very they did what they're supposed to do, which is get a job directly out of university and start saving up for retirement, I guess. And I decided to retire right after college, and my retirement's been going great.
what is that? What did you order, Mark?
That's a Mediterranean salad.
Oh wow! What's in it? What's in it?
Tuna and eggs. Salad.
It looks fantastic.
It's just like the photograph.
Yes, very nice, very nice.
This is really why I came to Spain.
Oh, because of the food.
The salads.
Oh, the salad? It's fantastic salad. How about yours, Lori? What do you have?
It's shrimp with avocado and
Oh,
tomato.
wow. That's the one I ordered also. Doesn't that look fantastic?
Exactly like the photograph on the menu. Exactly.
In Spain, the food comes just like the photographs.
And in Spain we say buen provecho.
We say what now?
Buen provecho.
Which is what?
Enjoy it.
And what else do I want to say about the freedom?
Yeah, you would, yeah.
The freedom. So there's this idea in the States that if you're going to be anyone, that you have to have a job that's legitimate, or not just legitimate, but a job that
Standard.
just a standard job.
Yeah.
And I think people in the States forget about maybe some people have personal goals and things that they want to do with their life other than work for a boss.
Tell us about the job, playing guitar.
That happened about 4 months after I came to Spain. And I was running low on money. I was down to maybe my last 150 euros, and like I said before, I wanted to stay in Spain for a year or two, or maybe more. And I was already almost out of money 4 months later. That's when I was walking down Albaicin Street, the same street where my first house was. And I ran into what's become a very good friend of mine, a guy named Jamie, who comes out of Australia. And I noticed this guy with a guitar on his backpack, and I had seen him around, and he kind of upset me because I never saw him playing the guitar. I only saw him carrying it around. And so I saw him on the street that night, and I said, "Hey man, why don't you play that thing?" And so we sat down there on the side of the street with a couple other people and ended up playing guitars. And for a while, and he told me that's what he was doing for a living here in Granada. And he told me that he was making a living out of it, and that you can make a living out of it. And so I thought to myself, well, hey, I know how to play a little bit of guitar. And a couple days after that, I went down with my last 100 euros and bought a guitar at the guitar store. And the next morning, I played my first terrace. There was only 2 tables of people, but it was enough for 2 euros, which was going to be plenty for my coffee, which is really all I wanted. And when I went into the cafe where I played the terrace at, I ordered the coffee, and when I went to pay for it, the boss refused to take the money and said, "No, I like the way you sing. This one's on us." And it was a very good way to get into this life of playing music on the street, which is what I do now.
Well, okay. Well, first let me start out by saying that Americans oftentimes fail to remember that we're all from someplace else. That we are the first people, you know, like Americans, a lot of Americans only have one generation born in the United States so far. A lot of Americans are not aware of the geography and political history of the southern United States, parts of which were Mexico, and therefore the people there of Mexican descent may have been there a lot longer than it's been called the United States, you know?
Absolutely.
And may very well not have been illegal immigrants, you know? This is something a lot of Americans don't realize. A lot of Americans don't even realize that New Mexico is part of the United States. They think it's like another country or something. I think it's really important that Americans always remember that just about all of us come from someplace else. I mean,
Right.
you know, I'm only the second generation born in the United States. And most of the people I grew up with were also only the second or sometimes only the first generation born in the United States. I think one thing that's really good about that is that until really recently, I think America was one of the very few countries in the world that didn't have a real sense of nationalism, which I thought of as being a really good and a very healthy thing.
I have a hard time feeling nationalism. Where my family is from is what is called the United States. But when I say United States, I don't feel like I'm really saying anything about my family from the Southwest, northern New Mexico, southern Colorado, because this whole Southwest area was colonized or moved into by Spaniards 400 years ago, roughly, and so this was roughly also then. Well, my grandpa remembers when the first white people arrived in his town, which was roughly 70 years ago, which would be roughly 1930.
And where was that?
In San Luis, Colorado, which is considered to be the oldest town in Colorado, because it probably is the oldest town in Colorado. It's been there for a couple hundred years, a lot longer than Colorado's been a state. And my grandpa tells me also, my grandpa was only 6 or 7 or 8 at the time. He says when the white people moved in, he had a kid the same age as my grandfather. And 1 year later, that kid was speaking Spanish instead of everyone else learning how to speak English. And that's the way it is down there in these little towns of the Southwest.
When your grandfather says he remembers when the first white people came,
Gringo.
which white people is he talking about?
What we call gringo, which is white-skinned. Gringo is not a bad word. It's just a way to.
Depends on how it's used.
It can be used, I guess, in a bad way, but in its true definition, the way it's used amongst my family, it's not a bad word. It's a way of describing someone with white skin. What we call white-skinned person.
Okay, but you don't consider yourself as somebody with white skin?
No. We're what we consider brown. What we call ourselves as brown.
I ask all of this because I look at you. I think
My dad is even fairer skinned than me, and if he takes his shirt off, he's white like that. But he's not white. There's a slight little tinge in the white that's kind of yellowish or something that you can tell you're not from Anglo-Saxon.
Okay, so you are using that to talk about Anglo-Saxon.
Well, for me, it always meant someone white, but it can be someone with brown hair. I mean, when I grew up, we have. In my family, we're what we call Chicanos or Hispanics, and I mean, I go to my grandparents' house, everyone's speaking Spanish, you know, I would go to great-grandma's, she doesn't even speak English at all, you know, and then I go to my friend's house, and they go to their grandparents, everyone speaks English, those guys are gringos. It's not a bad word, it's just a way of saying the people who came from the east out of nowhere.
Am I gringo? Am I gringo? Yeah.
Gringa.
You're gringo?
Gringa.
Gringo.
Gringo. But it does depend on how you use it.
In my family, we don't use it as a bad way at all.
Okay, some people do.
We say, you know, so and so, he's gringo. You know, like you say, no, Billy, the black guy, something like that. That's the way how we use it. You know? or gabacho is another word. Gabacho. Gabacho is another word that we use to denote someone, or not to describe someone with white skin.
That I never heard. Gabacho.
Gabacho. Which they don't use here in Spain. It's used in Mexico, Southwest United States also, in Guatemala. A lot of that area.
Marcus, what do you think about the current world situation with all this September 11 terrorism? What's happening around the planet? What's your opinion about all that?
I think that in the time the Nazis were coming into power, most Germans didn't know how bad they were. And I wonder if that's what's going on with the Bush administration. For some people, it's blatantly obvious that the Bush administration is very corrupt and has obvious ulterior motives. But unfortunately, most of the people don't realize that, and that's what scares me.
Are you worried about what's happening? I mean, how do you see the future? You know.
God. Well, I see a lot of people very upset with my country, the United States, and the reasons for being upset are justified quite a few areas, but I know that my family back home is very good people, and I'm sure I know that the United States is filled with good people, but there's a big problem going on with the government right now, and it's really giving our country a very bad name all over the world, and that's very upsetting to me also, because I know we're not all bad people there. I really hope there's a big change in the government sometime in the next 20 years.
When you meet new people here in Granada, do you feel comfortable to tell them that you're American?
The question was if I feel uncomfortable being asked if I'm from America. I've never not said I'm from the States. I'm not proud. I'm ashamed right now to be an American, but I am from Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I got a lot of good friends there that I know are good people, and I'm never gonna try to deny that. But there's instances, yes, where I feel a little timid, and that's usually whenever I'm meeting Arab people. Moroccans, I've never had any problems, and you know, but I do. I have a couple times felt a little bit nervous about saying that I'm from the States.
¿Qué tal? ¿Bien?
Oh, yeah.
Bien.
Gracias.
¿Van a querer algo más? ¿Les traigo el postre? ¿Un postrecito?
I'm okay.
Estamos bien, gracias.
¿Sí? ¿No quieren ningún cafelito? ¿Café?
Café?
¿Café?
Yeah, cafe would be good.
¿No?
Dos. Con leche. Sí.
¿Dos cafés con leche?
Sí. ¿En vaso? How much coffee I can drink in one day? Just haven't found out yet.
I don't drink coffee anymore. Where was I at?
About the United States?
About meeting, recently you're meeting people from Morocco, you're feeling like a really good...
When I was down in Marbella last week, I met a couple of... It was nighttime, and someone called me down to the beach, and it was a Moroccan guy, and he was a good guy, and he went to go introduce me to his friend, and and I think most people think of firsthand that I'm Spanish when I speak in Spanish first. And then they asked me where I was from, and I told them I'm from the United States, but I remember the feeling right before I said it was, do I really have to say this or should I? But then I do. I always end up saying it anyway. But that feeling I think has been brought on, because of this problem going on in the White House. And
Marcus, do you have any message for Americans, for your countrymen you want to give them before you say goodbye?
Yeah. Don't forget it's 420. And I miss you guys, and you should come visit me sometime, everyone. You might learn something. Not visiting me, but traveling a little bit. You can see that there's many ways to do everything, and you don't have to follow the path that they tell you have to follow. You can choose your own way, and it's better.
Thank you so much. Bye.
I asked him what he studied at school.
My studies in school, I'll tell you, because it changed. I started out as a business major.
Really?
And I studied it because this thing I'm telling you about. About how people tell you to go into one thing, and so I started out as a business major and realized a year later that I was going insane with this finance and accounting stuff. I wish all my friends the best of luck who are doing it, but I can't. And at the same time I was taking philosophy classes, so I kind of switched gears over towards philosophy. And the whole time I was taking Spanish classes. So my last 2 years I concentrated mostly on philosophy, and ended up having a degree called interdisciplinary, which is 3 minors.
The 3 minors were philosophy.
Philosophy, Spanish, and business.
And business. Oh, really? That's a funny, strange, interesting
It's
combination.
quite a combination. Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, so I went in because I saw this guy sitting at the bar who I knew, and I wanted to say hello because I hadn't seen him for a few weeks. And I don't remember how the conversation got started, but he was saying to me, well, Americans, when they come here, they mainly hang out with other Americans.
Yeah.
And they think they have this experience of Spain, and especially their idea about, let's say, partying in Spain. And I started joking with him because he said to me something like, well, Spanish people really only go out like maybe 1 night a week, and they go out with their friends or with their family. Well, maybe because I said to him, it's not really that easy to meet Spanish people, And oftentimes, they're in their clique, which could be friends or family. And he said, well, it's the same thing with the Americans. They have their tight cliques, they come here, they hang out mostly with Americans. They don't really cross that much, integrate. And while we were having that conversation, everybody else in the bar was speaking English. It was just filled with Americans. Meantime, we're sitting there speaking in Spanish.
It's true, and the Bar Europa is a place where
it's too close to
a lot of Americans.
It's too close to the language school.
And Jamie, the Australian guy, made a comment that Americans only come to Europe to meet other Americans. It's so funny.
That's what this guy Ralph said to me also.
I think it's
partially true.
Partially quite true. Yeah. They want to meet other Americans that travel like them, but they're just doing America still in a different place.
Yeah. Whereas I oftentimes will avoid talking to old people I know who speak English because I feel like I'm speaking too much English every day.
You already know how to speak English. You already know how to speak
English. I already know how to speak Spanish too, but
You're in Spain though, yeah. You gotta get in there.
Actually, I find that now having been here more than a year, most of the people who I would consider like my closest friends here are all from someplace else. I would count a couple of Spanish people among them, but I mean, and I'm communicating with a lot of these people in Spanish, but from Czechoslovakia, from Poland, from France, from Morocco. We speak with each other in Spanish, but we're not Spanish.
Lori, how did you end up here? In Granada?
I was living in Morocco, and my visa had run up, and I needed to leave Morocco to get a stamp on my passport. So I took the night train and to Tangier and the boat over to Algeciras, Spain. I thought I would stay like maybe just 1 or 2 nights and then go back. But as soon as I got to Algeciras, I realized how close I was to Granada. I had wanted to come to Granada for 15 years. I got derailed every time I tried to come here. So I just decided I would jump on a bus, come up to Granada, and I would spend 1 or 2 nights in Granada. Well, I ended up spending about a week in Granada, and by the end of the week I decided that when I was finished being in Morocco, I would come back here. Here I am. I've been here about a year and 4 months now.
So how do you feel about this town?
Like I said to you last night, it's not what this town gives me, it's what it doesn't take away from me.
Yes. Can you explain that a little?
Well, that's sort of an indirect quote from Gertrude Stein, who left the United States. She was an American avant-garde writer. She left the United States, went to Paris to live in her 30s. After she'd been living there for some time, somebody, it might have been Hemingway, asked her how she felt about Paris. And she said something like, it's not what Paris gives me, it's what it doesn't take away from me. And considering the times that we're living through, something that you had started to say, I feel that I still have the rights that I've always had here. I don't feel that way in my own country anymore, and I haven't felt that way in my country for some time now.
Ever since when?
Well, very specifically, ever since the 11th of September. I've never held popular points of view about almost anything, and since the 11th of September, my point of view seems to be even more unpopular. And I feel that a lot of times I have to just shut my mouth and not express what my opinion is when I'm there. Or that when I do express my opinion, I'm really annoying and pissing off a lot of people.
Well, can you tell us a little about your opinion?
My opinion?
Yeah.
It's a big subject. I think America has lost its mind. We allowed our current president to steal his way into the White House without winning an election. None of what I think of as being democratic seems to be working. We don't seem to any longer really have a democratic process going on. We have a maniac sitting up in the White House who wasn't elected there, who's led us into an extremely dangerous war in terms of world opinion, where everybody is against the United States, where we're losing all of our allies, where we're losing Europe as an ally, which is a pretty major phenomena. We are seen as being, we Americans are seen as a collective as being not good people, with too much of a focus on money and not enough of a focus on human rights, and that all of our political maneuverings in other countries are always for financial gain.
Financial gain within only for us, though.
Only for Americans. I think that we got derailed off of, I don't want to sit here and say that I think capitalism is bad, because I've certainly enjoyed the fruits of capitalism, and continue to, here as well, to some degree. I don't think capitalism is bad, I think that it's not a question of bad or good, it's a question of there just doesn't seem to be any limit at this point. You know, we've created this entire false economy of creating products without any need for the products. We're doing nothing but creating new markets all the time to grow capitalism. And the split between rich and poor is way too great, and what I've already seen going on in other countries, which is basically a slow elimination of a fairly recent middle class, is happening in the United States as well. You know, I'm not so sure how many people you'd really consider in the middle class anymore. A lot of people are dropping out below that. A lot of people in their 30s and in their 40s are having to move home and live with their parents because they've lost their jobs. They don't have any recourse. They can't make a living. I just read last week in the newspaper that Americans are flying to Iraq to look for work, which I find so ludicrous.
Really? Kind of work?
Reconstruction. We don't take care of our own. To be the richest country in the world and to have homeless people and people who don't eat, that's criminal.
People don't have any insurance, health
They
insurance.
have no health insurance. All of that I find really criminal. You know? I'm also sick to death of playing ambassador or, you know, I recently don't say I'm from the States. Somebody asks me, especially since the scandal around the torture. I'm so horrified and disgusted about that, really. So horrified, so disgusted. I don't want to be identified with it. I don't even want to talk about it. So if somebody says, where are you from? I left yesterday. I just say, I'm from Canada. Fine, let's just skip right over that. It's very stressful.
Do you miss state?
Do I miss the States? Not really. Last time I was there, I was only there for about 13 days. I couldn't wait to get out of there. It was like 12 days too many. I felt so stressed out being there because I've lost that rhythm.
Yes.
You know, I want to enjoy the moments in my life that I can enjoy, you know. That's not all of them, but I look around when I'm in the States and I don't see that many people enjoying any part of it. It just seems like everybody's expressing stress.
Where are you from?
I'm from New York. I was born in New York. I grew up in New York.
Where in New York?
In Queens. My family, my mother and my sisters and I lived in Queens. My father died when I was 1. My mother remarried when I was going on 12. And we left New York City and we moved to the suburbs of New Jersey, about 10 miles out of New York City. And I lived there for a few years. And then I left home and I moved up to Vermont. I left home very young. I didn't like the suburbs.
Tell me a little about New York, huh?
As growing up, or
Yeah, what was it like?
what was it like? I grew up really loving New York, feeling like it was the best place in the world. I grew up in a mixed neighborhood. I grew up with other city kids. And I felt that there was a really big difference when my family moved to the suburbs in New Jersey. My impression at the age of 12 was that we had moved to the middle of nowhere. That the kids that I was now in school with were sort of these country bumpkins, and it was just 10 miles outside of New York City, but they were extremely sheltered. Most of the kids had never been in New York City, and weren't allowed to go to New York City unless they went with a chaperone. I don't know, I grew up in New York feeling like it was the center of the world.
What did you study?
Excuse me?
What did you study?
What did I study?
Yes.
I started out studying poetry, literature, philosophy, anthropology, international studies. I went to school during a really interesting time when a lot of things were changing, and I did an interdisciplinary studies program. And I think for my first 2 years in college, I must have changed my major about every 3 weeks. Anytime I'd get excited about something, I would decide, yeah, okay. But at the end, it was always literature, and it was always writing. And then I decided, well, then I had a car accident, and although I went back to school after the accident, I think I only did 1 semester after the accident, and then I realized I didn't want to be there anymore. I worked for a few years, and then I found out about a poetry program, and decided that that was what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. Because at the time that I was in school, there was no such thing as writing programs in the undergraduate world. All of the writing programs were at the graduate level. And this one school, Naropa Institute, which was pretty new, it was just a few years old, it wasn't accredited, it was very alternative, but they had an undergraduate writing program. You had to have former college because they weren't a full college at the time. And so that's where I went.
Who ran that program?
The poetics program
Yes.
was run by Allen Ginsberg and Ann Waldman.
Oh, wow.
And the school itself is Buddhist. The man who started the school, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, died in the 80s. I can't remember exactly when it was that he died. But he asked Allen Ginsberg to start a poetry school. The school started as not as a school. It started as like workshops or compendiums of people from different places, from the Salon Institute, from all kinds of alternative places, coming and basically learning and teaching together.
Did you meet him?
Oh yeah. I worked with him for a while doing
What years
the
was
poetics archives. I got to Naropa in '79.
Naropa.
Naropa Institute, yeah. I got there in 79. I was there 79, 80, 81.
He had just come out with which book? He died shortly after that time?
No, he just died a few years ago.
Oh, he just died a few years ago.
Yeah.
Big guy. He's big.
What do you mean?
Big.
No.
No, small.
Well, sort of normal sized for a long time, and then the last few years of his life he became very thin and he had health problems. God, I don't remember what book it was. I think his Selected Writings had just come out around that time. The big thick one with the red
the
dust
green.
jacket.
Okay, red. I never paid for
Well,
that.
okay. And a lot of famous people were there. I mean,
I love your poetry.
I thank you.
I love it.
All kinds of famous people were there, and that was a big draw for a lot of people to come there. But that wasn't the most interesting thing about being there by any means. In fact, to me, it was the least interesting aspect of being there, because all of those people were in so much demand and were so filled with themselves, actually, that there wasn't really any possibility for interesting dialogue. It was sort of the least of the famous people that were the most interesting, you know, and with whom you could have like the most interesting.
You include Alan in the famous category?
Yeah, but Alan I would put into a really different category, because Alan was somebody completely aware of his fame and very conscientious about how and when to use it and not to use it. We used to call him Grandma Ginsey, because he really would take care of everything and everybody. And he would always be the first person to take responsibility whenever anything went wrong. He was somebody who never shirked away from responsibility, human responsibility. And even though he had a lot of problems with women, he was not at all interested in women. And like I worked with him for a bunch of months on the Poetry Archives, and every day he addressed me by a different female name. You know, I mean, like for a while he called me Diane. You know. Still, I had enormous respect for him as a person. He was very honest with himself and with other people.
It should be.
Lori, where should people go to buy your book?
Amazon.com.
The name?
Except for Memory. Small press,
By Lori Price.
Pantograph Press.
Yes.
I think it's still in print.
Lori, how did you get into jewelry?
Okay, my mother says that ever since I was really little, I've always spent all my money on either books or jewelry. I think she's right. I've always loved decoration, adornment, beautiful objects, and the smaller the better. The mysteries of miniature worlds. I don't know, I've always made things, I've always used my hands. I was making tiny little objects, and then I realized I could turn those objects into pins by gluing a pin back onto them. So that's how I started making jewelry. And then I actually learned some jewelry techniques, and I took a class, and then I started actually studying jewelry, like studying jewelry from different centuries, different parts of the world.
Oh, wow.
Because I've always had a pretty fixed list of things that fascinated me. Nomadic cultures, gypsies, anything having to do with Orientalism, the ancient silk trade routes, the exchange of culture and of goods and of value. I'm fascinated by the idea of a chunk of glass that was made in Czechoslovakia being traded on the ancient silk trade routes for gold. This is a chunk of glass.
Can we see it?
Yeah, can you see it?
Oh yeah, it's beautiful. Can I see the other one too?
This one's Mexican.
Oh, that is gorgeous. Yes.
Turquoise.
And I like your
An amethyst, yeah.
bracelet.
These are Tuareg
Yes.
From where?
from the Sahara.
Can you
From
bring it closer to the camera?
southern Morocco, Mauritania, Mali, made by nomads, old. I like old things. I don't like new things. Very few new things. Some new things I really like, but I've always been fascinated with old things, found objects, things that I find on the street, things for free. Yesterday when you and I were walking towards your apartment, I picked up a fantastic piece of rusted metal,
Oh wow.
which I'll use to make something.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Can you see that?
fantastic, huh?
Oh my god, just hold on to it. Let me look at it close by. Oh, this is incredible.
Yeah. Just
And
an
you
old...
could make a nice jewelry with it.
Well, no, I won't make jewelry. I'll use
What
it for
would
some
you-
sort of an assemblage,
Yes, yes.
a collage box,
Oh
or
yes, yes, yes.
some sort of a... I'll see. I don't know.
That's fascinating.
I collect things from the street.
I love reused stuff.
I've always collected things from the street. It's always.
You went back to the state, yes? Recently?
Recently,
Yeah, you went back to the state like a few months ago?
I was back in the States in October.
October.
Yeah.
How did that go?
How did that go? It was really hard for me. I felt uncomfortable. Even though I've been outside of the States again for over 2 years now, it seems to me like people are always trying to talk me back into coming back to the States, but for what reason I can't possibly fathom. Life is too hard there for what's important to me. Life here is a lot easier for what's important to me.
Can you get into more detail about what you mean?
Okay, the last 5 years I lived in the United States, I lived in New York. New York is a place that when you get there, you have to hit the ground running. You work like a maniac. You work a lot of hours. You have very little time or energy for anything else. When you're not working, you're recuperating from working, or you're recuperating from the subway ride, or you're recuperating from the stress of this, that, or the next thing. And even though I think in some ways I had a really terrific time for the 5 years I was in New York, and I so-called did very well for myself, you know, I had a fantastic apartment that I loved. I hated my work, but I always managed to kind of pull it together so that I would have my 1 month or my 2 months out of the year that I would leave, because I never had a full-time regular job. I always worked through a temp agency so I could make my own schedule basically. But I lived with a lot of insecurity most of the time about whether or not, anytime there was anything political going on wherever I worked, all the temps would always start getting a little bit nervous, you know, that maybe we would lose our jobs, or there was another agency that was now offering people to do the same work we did for $1 an hour less, and in terms of my life outside of my work, I had a really, really limited social life, limited both by my own exhaustion and by not really meeting any new people. I know people in New York that I've known for more than 20 years, but in terms of meeting new people, I didn't find it all that easy to do that, or I wouldn't meet people that I had anything in common with. I think part of that has to do with, the fact that I'm older, and that a lot of people my age have families, they're raising children, they've left the cities, they're out in the suburbs, whatever it is, but they've dug into one thing or another as I've dug into what I dig into. And New York is an expensive place to go out in, so I didn't do very much going out. Nor was I really all that interested in it anymore. I've had enough of that in my life. I spent a lot of time in my apartment, an inordinate amount of time actually, doing art projects, working on writing, keeping myself busy and amused, learning new things. But I would say at the end of all of that, the thing that I really felt the lack for was that I wasn't sharing that with very many people. And many people around me seemed to echo the sentiment that those days were gone to share those things. And I disagree. I'm sort of a perennial child. I never really wanted to completely grow up, and I haven't. And people really blame me for it and hold me guilty of that all the time. And I will say one more time, I'm going to turn 49 in 2 months. Or 3 months. What is it? August 4th, I'll be turning 49. So be it.
Forever young.
Maybe that's why you look so young, Lori. It's because you lived a nice life. Enjoying what you like to do. Huh?
I mean, I've also suffered a lot and, spent years being really depressed.
Yes.
But because I really refused to give up what I thought was important or what I believed in or what I wanted in my life, I think I would have been a lot more depressed had I given those things up and settled into something that, even the tiny little attempts that I made to settle into certain things, it was really biting off just the little tip of the iceberg of what many people think that somebody my age should be doing, and I could hardly do that, I think I would die if I had stayed there. And here, okay, I don't know that many people around my age group. Well, I probably know more people here around my age group than, let's say, people that I met in New York, Most of the people that I didn't know when I came to New York that I met in New York were in their 20s or 30s. And I generally tend to have maybe more in common with them on some levels, but then on some other levels, I might be thinking about other things in life. I might be finished or sort of done with certain kinds of experiences. I don't feel like I need to do those again. And probably also being in my 40s means that I'm thinking ahead a little bit. I'm thinking, well, how am I going to survive? I mean, we were just talking about that earlier. Here in Granada, I've done all kinds of funny things that, really are, I mean, I had a little tiny food business for about 1 month where I was baking cookies. I could still do that here, I could still play.
What do you think about the current situation around the world?
I think it's a terrible mess. I hope that if nothing else, that this really spells disaster for George W. Bush. I think the only good thing that might come out of anything that's going on right now is that he doesn't get elected in this next election. But I think it's too far gone for there to be really anything good coming out of it. Whereas all along I thought the U.S. should pull out, now on second thought, that might not be such a great idea either because we've made such a mess over there. We've occupied this country, and if we just pull out, then what? I'm sort of going, this week I'm in a little bit of a news blackout. After last week, I need to take a breather.
Do you keep in touch of what's happening?
I have a habit of going out and having a coffee and reading 2 or 3 newspapers every day in Spanish. And then later I go to the internet and I check the New York Times. Just the headlines, unless there's something I really want to read about that I didn't understand so well in Spanish. And I know that most of it's not the truth anyway, or it's very limited, or we're only being informed about 1 tiny % of what's going on. But I'm getting enough of a picture to know that that it's bleak, that it's horrifying, and that more recently, like I've said before, it's become sort of embarrassing to admit where I'm from. And I think, I think there's a really big difference between peoples and their governments everywhere in the world. I don't know that there's any exception.
I wonder why we have such corrupt governments, huh?
I'm sort of amazed at how transparent the corruption in the United States is right now.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the last election. Gracias. The last election. That was such transparent corruption, with them counting votes for 3 weeks.
Hanging Chad.
Yeah, exactly. Governor of Florida's Bush's brother. Gore stepped out of the race, and Bush occupied the White House. I consider that an occupation.
Yes.
And I fled like an immigrant. And I also think that the level of political discussion in the United States I don't know, I wonder about it. I don't really know anything about it. I'm really out of touch. And I'm really out of touch with other Americans. I'm hardly in touch with anybody that I know in the States. Very little at this point. the longer that I'm outside of the States, on each occasion I've been out of the States, the less people stay in touch. Basically, out of sight, out of mind. So I don't really have a very clear feeling for what's going on amongst the American people. How many red flags are being raised, how many people are speaking out, what kinds of activities are going on against what the government's doing. I could read about things on the internet, but that doesn't give me the same kind of picture as I would get if I were there.
Lori, could you tell us about that story about when you went to vote in New York? What happened?
Yeah, well, okay, I was living in Brooklyn. I lived in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I went to the local public school to vote, and the machines weren't working. And while I was standing and waiting online to vote, I thought to myself, how can this be New York City? Anywhere else in the world, it might not raise a red flag, but for me it raised a red flag, and I had moved to New York City after living in Mexico for 4 years, which has a long history of political corruption that I got to see from very interesting angles. I worked on the newspapers, and I was really shocked. I had to handwrite my vote, and I knew that my vote wouldn't be counted, and I knew that the piece of paper that I wrote my vote on probably wasn't going to be packed or brought any place, or that it would get lost on the way, or that it would blow off the back of a truck, or whatever. And I wasn't all that surprised when all of this fiasco started around the counting of the votes. And for 3 weeks, we waited to find out who would be our president. And to me, during that time, the level of corruption was really transparent and right in front of the American people. And it would have been very difficult to defend what was going on, and yet we collectively accepted it. And I put myself as part of that group, because what did I do either? I mean, I might have written a few letters to senators or congressmen, but we the people don't have power anymore. We the people may not have had power ever in our lifetimes, but we the people certainly had some feeling that we had that feeling that maybe our opinions counted, maybe our votes counted. I'm one of the few people I know who even votes, and I do it out of some feeling of being conscientious, of taking advantage of that liberty that I know that people don't have in many other parts of the world. I should comment that we're sitting in Granada, Spain, listening to some kind of country western music on the piped-in music. Is it country western? Kind of.
It sounds country westernish. This is what we listen to in Wyoming.
Beautiful, both of you in the picture.
This music. If I had met you way back